Interstellar is a movie about Earth as it is seen in its most dire state. Food is slowly becoming less and less harvestable throughout the years, and it's about ex-NASA pilot Joseph Cooper, who has to, with his crew, find the planet that humans can survive on for the at least a little amount of time left. It's mainly about letting go of Earth and finding somewhere to live that is more habitable for us as a species. Interstellar takes up a lot of time on Earth for a space movie. It helps build the story for the movie and the rest of the story on Earth. The first 30 to 40 minutes on Earth shows how Earth has somewhat become a dystopian world. It gives good world building concepts like, for example, the moon landing generally on the world being seen as fake. The details in the world are more interesting the more you rewatch it. I have seen this movie numerous times, and you notice more details, especially on this part, that makes the world seem even more eerie and realistic. You see the idea of minimal or no wildlife in the movie on Earth, really showing how the planet is in a dire situation. The other parts that are interesting are the types of cars they drive in the movie. Most of the cars that are shown or seen on Earth are either trucks like Ford F-150s or military vehicles like Jeeps, which are shown in the second half of the movie during the later half of it. This would be weird because they would be seen as gas-guzzling cars, but since humanity is being seen as trying to survive together, they don't. In one of the early scenes, they show an Indian surveillance drone going over the world and being taken by Cooper and his family for parts. It shows that countries and borders still exist in this world, but rather war is something that humans could not prepare for or even participate in. People on this planet have nothing, and it shows. Everybody has to survive on just the crops that are grown, which is why nutrients and other things necessary to survive are barely gotten by people. One of the ways people usually say the world could end is nuclear war, which this movie doesn't do because there are more scientific answers for this and how it would happen. The scientific possibility of what would happen for how the world would reach this state is actually a dust bowl, which makes the movie more accurate in that department. Throughout the movie, there were more dust storms than any time period in the world, something similar to the Dust Bowl during the Great Depression, which is in something else, something humans have survived, so which was on the extreme end. There were still baseball games in the world, but the fact of how small the baseball games are also show how there's no airplanes in the world, and travel is not a thing people really worry about anymore because they have other things to worry about. The team that is playing in the baseball scene appears to be the New York Mets and another team. They don't seem to be real players because most of the other players seem to be doing other things in this world. The house has rooms that are usually found in a house, but the interesting thing comes when they find the dust in the room. The room that the dust is found in comes in importance later, as the room and the bookshelves are used for foreshadowing and a bunch of other things, like the title code. The title code in the movie has similar letter spacing to the movie Alien, where the letters are apart and slowly fade in. The only difference between that and Alien is that Alien has one letter at a time fade in, and it takes a while to load the word Alien, but in Interstellar, the whole word is at once. The bookshelf is seen in the background of the title code, as dust falls off the shelf. This also gives ideas to most things that people will need to know for a while on the planet. Most of the scenes that happen in Murph's bedroom was the bookshelves, are some of the most interesting scenes. Watching this movie more and more has made me realize that if you know where to look in these scenes, you can see the foreshadowing and you can imagine the things that are going to happen later on. The scene where Dr. Brand is showing the rocket to Coop is interesting the more you know the reasoning and the layout of the room. The room is shaped like a centrifuge, which is a device in medicine that is used to separate the blood and the contents of the blood. It does this by using high-speed G's of circular motion to get them separated. This is one of the common examples of laws of physics used throughout the movie. The parent-teacher conference is also interesting because the two characters that are introduced are never brought up again, but they were made for world building. They keep the identity of the world and explain how it got to the place it's at right now. Continuing the story summary, the rocket that Coop is on gets attached to the Endurance. The Endurance is the space station that holds the rocket and helps the astronaut crew get to the wormhole. The crew that is going to the wormhole is made up of Coop, Professor Brand, Romilly, and Doyle. If you've seen the movie and know the science behind it, you'll notice the Endurance uses the circular motion laws to get higher Gs. It does this like the centrifuge, but differently, because in space you can't turn yourself around. If you're stranded in space and have no way of getting back, but are holding a wrench, or mainly any object, you can throw that object in the opposite direction of wherever you want to go, and because of the forces used in space and the way you threw it, you'll go in the direction you want to go. This is the same thing that the Endurance uses. The Endurance spins its way through the cosmos as it approaches the wormhole, but while it does that, the crew rests, and we see Murph and the rest of Coop's family live their lives and be sad that he's gone. Of course, Murph being the saddest out of all of them. They get the news that they can send messages to Coop and can contact him through NASA's communications. After the group in space gets to the wormhole, they enter the wormhole and we get to see the inside of it. On the inside of the wormhole is a more condensed place in space, so it looks like a fast travel system from a video game for whoever's in it, but of course on a larger scale. They exit the wormhole and start to be on their way to Gargantua, which is a giant black hole where the planets that can support life could be. They go towards the planet and decide to go to Miller's planet first. The black hole keeps expanding, and it gives off a cool effect for the design. The movie at the Oscars won Best Special Effects, and looking at all of these scenes, it really does show because they look really good. The effects and where they were filmed get better throughout the film. After deciding to go to Miller's planet, Romilly stays up in the Endurance to study the gravity and the others' physics behind the black hole. The rest of the team goes down there, as there is time dilation of 1 hour on Miller's planet equaling 7 years. After watching this movie in class one week, we had to do a project on one of the physics-related things in the movie, and I did mine on time dilation. There's sadly no planet like Miller's planet, or maybe happily, depending on how you look at it, but there are different planets with time dilation, but none as strong as Miller's. When landing on Miller's planet, the group sees how it's all water and it looks to be too deep. They get the feeling that this may be a fully watered planet, which would only be good for fishes and sharks because they can swim in it. But when they land, the water is revealed to be waist-level shallow, which is good for people who don't know how to swim. The scene continues with them barely finding any data, as it's all been destroyed, and them seeing a giant wave incoming, which means they have to get out of it. Bran wants to collect the data for some reason, like there's a random chance humans can live on this planet anyways. Still don't know why she did this, but Tars saves Bran and gets back to their ship with her. Doyle doesn't get back to their ship in time as the wave's taken down, still because of Bran, and ends up dying on the planet. Also, considering the planet has a 7-year time dilation, they should have known the data was limited. As you'll see later in this film, a lot of stuff is done just because of Bran. After the ship is recovered because of the wave, they head out of the planet. It is revealed when they get back that it has been 23 years since they left Romilly on the Endurance. Poor Romilly. Specifically, it's been 23 years, 4 months, and 8 days. You could literally graduate college in that time. They then decide to head out of orbit towards Man's planet. Coop and the others decide to check out the messages, but Coop's messages are different. A lot of the messages that are for Coop are from Tom, and it seems like none of them are from Earth. The messages reveal that Tom had a kid named Jess, and then he died due to the dust on the planet, and that he had a few kids with his wife. Coop cries as the last message by Murph plays. Sadly, it's her only one, as she is now the same age as Coop when he left to go to space. After Coop looks at the messages, we see that Murph is working with Dr. Brand back on Earth. He's in a wheelchair, but they keep working on ways to get humans to the other planets. In between the crew's journey, Murph is told that Plan A, of course, was never meant to be. Man's planet is a bunch of ice clouds in a really cold planet. It looks like New England during the winter on a good day, but the crew lands on the planet and finds Man still alive in his bed. He wakes up and it's revealed to be the famous actor from New England, Matt Damon, so he's used to the conditions. It's cool that this movie has a famous cameo that plays an important role in the movie, and it was never advertised or mentioned in the trailers. Man wakes up and is given some time to rest before they start exploring the planet. The cold planet where days are 67 hours long and nights are 67 hours long. It's basically 6 times longer than the days on Earth combined. Maybe even more. Man and Coop decide to go to the surface that was told about by man because it has chemicals that can actually hold human life. This would imply that the planet has multiple layers, which in itself seems dystopian as you're already living underground. It would literally be like Midgard from Final Fantasy VII. I don't know, it does seem weird to have 2 layers of sky. As Cooper and Man explore the planet, they go down into some beautiful scenery, and Man reveals the truth to Cooper. The planet was never meant to be lived on by humans, and rather, he was just trying to escape from the planet. Cooper realizes this only after the transmitter has been ripped out from his suit and Man has isolated him. It leads to one of the darkest fights in any sci-fi movie I've seen. The idea of somebody losing their family is already dark enough, but when you mix it with the idea of Coop being stranded on this planet in a whole different galaxy from the rest of his family, the fight gets way darker than it already was. What also is more dark is Murph and Tom's fight back on Earth. It's sad and shows the idea of abandonment in a family when they have no role models and nobody to guide them. A family with no role models that has to fend for themselves after their last guardian has died. After the fight, Cooper is put in danger as his helmet is cracked and Man is in a ship flying away. Romilly has died due to an explosion with corrupted data in Man's TARS model. Man flies away and has to dock on the Endurance as Brand rescues Cooper from dying, which leads to one of the best scenes in sci-fi, the docking scene. The docking scene has many things going through it that are so right, and it's all about the science and the music. The fact that there's no sound in space shown in the scene, the explosion in space caused by an intense score and scene. After the docking scene, they realize they have to let go to get to Edmund's planet, which is the last and only planet they never went to. They let go of 2 things as they get closer to Gargantua, which means that they are only wasting more time due to the time dilation of a black hole. They let go of TARS first, which is already a loss of a great one, because it's TARS, and then Cooper. They both enter the black hole and we are introduced to the Tesseract. Some people know what a Tesseract is because of Marvel Comics. I've heard of that version of a Tesseract, but I don't know how similar it is to the one in this movie. The one in this movie is a 5D object where time is seen as a visible dimension, like the x-axis or any of those 3 dimensions. This is the part where in most Christopher Nolan movies, you need to rewatch it because it doesn't make sense and you have to figure it out on your own. Cooper communicates with Murph in many periods of time to help her solve the equations that are needed to make humans survive on another planet. Murph gets the work done and then it looks like the Tesseract is disappearing and Cooper is seen as leaving the Tesseract and floating in outer space. The last scene we see of Coop is waking up in a hospital room and getting out of bed while being only 124 years old. He is only that old in theory because if he was actually that old, he might not even get out of bed at all. He gets out of bed to see the world has become a temporary home for humans, not Earth, but a different station called Cooper Station. It looks to be a circular inwards-like planet, like a donut planet, and then at the end, he goes to the rocket base and he steals one of the rockets to try to get to Brand on Edmund's planet. The closing shots are that, and Brand on Edmund's planet without a helmet on and breathing the fresh air as it's revealed that that was the planet that can help save humans. Hans Zimmer made the score for this movie and it definitely shows. If you've ever listened to the soundtrack individually of this movie, you know why it's good. It's because it has tracks that are iconic and tracks that are long but worth it. So basically EDM club drop mixes. But the Interstellar main theme is iconic and it's always a bop when you listen to it. When you get to the main part of the song though, that's when you get into a mood. I don't know too much about chord progression, music theory, or anything about music because I don't study music, but it definitely uses similar chord progressions, but it works in this movie because it's a general theme versus something that if it was used on something like a pop album, it'd be annoying because it's pop music, but in this album it serves a purpose. You tell what tracks use it, and when it's because it's a chord progression used in the main theme, which is the most popular track from the album. I personally think that out of all the Christopher Nolan movie soundtracks, this may be my favorite because of the meaning and iconicism it has to each track. The songs add meaning to the scenes, especially to the docking scene as mentioned before, but some of these scenes wouldn't be the same without the music, and that's saying something. The Cornfield Chase song, which is the most streamed song on the album on Spotify, is the one song that changed a scene the most. The whimsical feeling of the scene would not be the same without the song playing, because the scene would just be color sounds. But to be fair, a handful of scenes in any movie would be boring without music, and just pure sound. Now the soundtrack is definitely better than those of the Tenet soundtrack, but sadly, this one doesn't have a Travis Scott song on it, for obvious reasons. But it can also be compared to Oppenheimer and the Dark Knight trilogy soundtracks. In the soundtrack, if you listen closely, you can hear parts of a stopwatch in it. The track that plays on Miller's Planet, aka Mountains, has a stopwatch in it in the background, which matches the beat of one click every 1.5 seconds. The ticks represent a single day on Earth due to the time dilation on the planet. The stopwatch is also used on the track Coward, which is the track used during the docking scene. The scene doesn't have any time dilation, but the stopwatch represents the time they have to get to the ship and stop the Endurance from blowing up. Another cool fact about this track is throughout it, it changes paces, and you can kind of hear different themes in it, like something similar to Mountains, and then something like the Day One theme from earlier in the movie. Tracks range in length for anybody listening to them on the go or not watching the movie, but they will fly by if you enjoy them because of how hype they are. Some of these songs might as well be on a gym playlist, because if you heard Mountains while lifting weights, you might think, what's the stopwatch for? But then, when it gets to the good part, you remember what you're listening for. Overall, the music is very uplifting and intense, but that's a good job that Hans Zimmer did on the movie, because it's more than background noise, it's actually music, and that's when you know it's a good soundtrack. These facts won't be in any order at all, because I forgot when they happened in what order. Anyways, in the movie, Anne Hathaway can be seen with cut hair, which is different than the previous role she had as Catwoman in The Dark Knight Rises. This is because they would have had to animate her hair in zero gravity later on in the movie, and she decided to cut it to make it easier on the team. Tars is a robot who wasn't originally going to have the design that he had in the movie. He was originally going to be similar to a human-like robot in shape. Tars would have had arms and hands, and it was originally going to have more human movements instead of the rectangular movements that he has now. It would have changed a lot in this movie because Tars has a unique design only exclusive to him, and as you'll see later in the movie, the other robots like him. As said, before they sold the corn for all the profits, but they had acres and acres of corn, which actually resembles a real-life farmland. Maybe not as big, because it was a billion corn, but there's more facts to the movie, so I didn't list every one of them. But if you do your own research, you'll probably find more interesting facts. Now for the numbers of Interstellar. Interstellar came out on October 26, 2014 for one of its early releases, but the poster I have on my wall says November 5th, 2014. And this means it's one of the only Christopher Nolan movies not to have a summer release date. The budget for the movie was $165 million. For those who really like box office numbers, that is more than Oppenheimer and Inception, but below The Dark Knight and Tenet. It made about $742 million in the box office, which means it was the advertising budget, because that's expensive. It made about $47.2 million in profit, which sounds like nothing, because it is. The score review on IMDb is an 8.7 out of 10, and as the time of recording this, it is the 19th highest rated movie on the website, and on Letterboxd as a 4.6 out of 5, which puts it, at the time of recording again, the 85th highest rated movie on the website. The other movies were 73% on Rotten Tomatoes, don't know why, and a 4 out of 5 on Facebook. There's a lot to say about this movie. It does a lot of cool space stuff. I might make a separate video about other cool space stuff, because space, overall, is cool. But in general, this movie uses time very well and uniquely. And you can look for more details the more you watch the movie. And overall, the first movie on the list, it's at the top because it's the first movie, and it's a 10 out of 10. A good movie, and for a corny rating, you can say thumbs up, and leave thoughts in the comments or somewhere else, and try to watch the movie afterwards. Bye.